Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I'm Claire Van Blaricum. I am the co-chair of the Voter Service Committee for the League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara, and I will be the moderator for tonight's forum. The League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara and the Santa Barbara Goleta Valley branch of AAUW, the American Association of University Women, are sponsoring tonight's forum for the candidates for the 3rd District supervisorial seat in Santa Barbara County. We're coming to you live from the boardroom of the Goleta Union School District, whom we thank for their cooperation in making this venue available. We hope this forum will inform you, the voters, of the candidates' views on issues of interest to you. Note that the League neither supports nor opposes any candidate or political party. I want to thank Silvio Uribe of Transil Pro, who will be providing simultaneous interpretation from English to Spanish. Our thanks also to Television Santa Barbara, TVSB, for live streaming the forum on the League's Facebook page and recording it for later viewing on YouTube via the Santa Barbara League's website, LWVSantaBarbara, all one word, .org. In case I forget to mention it at the end, we do have a crucial election coming up on March 5th. You can check to make sure that your voter registration is up to date, your address, etc. is correct, at voterstatus.sos.ca.gov. If it needs to be updated, you can re-register to vote at registertovote, all one word, .ca.gov. All registered voters in California will receive a ballot in the mail, so be sure to register by the deadline, which is February 20th, 2024, to be sure that you receive your ballot packet in the mail. Please remember to vote. All of you are welcome to join the League and to make a tax-deductible contribution in order to finance voter education programs such as this. Go to our Santa Barbara League of Women Voters website at lwvsantabarbara, all one word, .org in order to do that. All 3 candidates for County Supervisor representing the 3rd Supervisorial District are here with us tonight: Joan Hartman, Janelle Osborne, and Frank Troyes. Thank you for attending and for running for office. Here's how our forum will work. We use the traditional League of Women Voters process and ground rules, which all 3 candidates have agreed to follow. To maintain civility and the issue-oriented nature of our forum, we do not allow candidates to make negative comments about other candidates' character or qualifications, but rather we ask them to address their own qualifications and vision for the office and their views on issues facing Santa Barbara County and the 3rd District. We remind you again that this is not a debate, but rather a forum to allow candidates to put forth their views and qualifications. First, each candidate will make a brief opening statement, up to 2 minutes. Then I will ask them questions from our prepared list, giving each candidate a maximum of 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds, to answer. We will rotate the order of the responses. The beginning order will be alphabetical by last name. A League member will operate the electronic timer. The candidates will have an opportunity to answer as many of these questions as possible within the remaining time. Please note that we have plenty of questions, and it is not unwelcome to give short answers or to even agree with your opponents. At the end, each candidate will have an opportunity to make a closing statement of no more than 2 minutes. Let's get started. Our first opening statement will come from Joan Hartman.
Thank you. Is the mic on? All right. The job of a county supervisor is all about teamwork, addressing county business with the board members, delivering constituent services with the 23 county departments, and working with communities to achieve their particular goals. So you can assess an elected leader's effectiveness as a team player by their endorsements. Candidates say lots of things in an election, but endorsements ground truth the rhetoric. People won't stake their reputation on questionable candidate. Endorsements are a seal of approval. I'm very proud of the endorsements I've received from Congressman Carbajal, Senator Limón, Assemblymember Hart, fellow board members, and elected department heads. I'm especially pleased with endorsements relative to Goleta. I've been endorsed by the entire Goleta City Council, including Mayor Perotti, and the city's first mayor, Margaret Connell, showing I work hard for Goleta. Council members from each and every one of the county's 8 cities have endorsed me, showing broad appreciation for my hard work. The Goodland Coalition and fans of Goleta, showing I work hard for Goleta's residents. The Sierra Club and the Center for Biological Diversity, showing my strong environmental credentials. Leah Stokes, architect of this nation's landmark green energy bill, showing my effectiveness on renewable energy. The Planned Parenthood and the Santa Barbara Women's Political Committee, showing I stand up for women's rights and especially reproductive freedom. Dolores Huerta, leading civil rights and labor activist, vouching for my work on social justice. The United Domestic Workers and John Bauman, president of the Social Security Works, showing seniors are a priority. These endorsements are expressions of trust by regional leaders who want to continue working with me to get things done. These people and organizations have done the work to vet my candidacy. If you trust them, you can trust me.
Thank you. Ms. Osborne.
Good evening. I want to thank the League and AUW for putting this forum on and for all of you for coming out tonight. For those that don't know me, my name is Janelle Osborne. Currently, I serve as the mayor for the city of Lompoc. I got my start in local government by volunteering to be on the city's Economic Development Committee. That was driven by questions I was asking about my community after I started my own business. And I was able to be in town more because I used to commute to Goleta every day of the week for 5 days a week and sometimes on the weekends because I actually worked for Montessori Center School right here behind us. And it allowed me a chance to start recognizing that Lompoc had issues and what needed to be done to improve them. So I educated myself about the community by volunteering on the Economic Development Committee. And then my community asked me to run. And so I served on the council. My council and community asked me to run for mayor, and I was lucky to be elected to mayor. In my time as mayor, I've begun to realize a lot of our communities, Goleta, Buellton, San Ynez, Solvang, and all of the unincorporated areas around us are experiencing problems that we don't have any control of, but trickle down or run downhill at us from the county. So I decided that it was time with the redrawing of the districts to have a different voice, someone who has a lived experience with the struggles of the commuter population here between Santa Barbara, Goleta, Lompoc, and the the 3rd District, and an opportunity to provide a different viewpoint. I am not registered with any party. I have always been a nonpartisan candidate. I believe that issues are local issues and should be solved from a local perspective, not from an ideological or political party. And I've worked to do that from the City Council. So there are examples of the coalition and the compromise that I'm willing to work on with varying members of my council, and I would want to take that and represent you at the 3rd District level. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Troyes.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you for making the time, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this together. Ladies and gentlemen, you have in front of you an historic choice as it relates to this campaign. You have 3 candidates in front of you with 3 very different voices. Part 1, relative to the incumbent. The incumbent is here tonight because for the prior 2 terms, she had a majority of votes, 10,000 of which came from UCSB. Now with the redistricting, she now has to make the case to you that for the prior 8 years, she has and will continue to be an advocate for your best interests here in Goleta. Ladies and gentlemen, 75% of you have already made the decision that that record does not stand merit, which is the reason why both Janelle and I were asked to run in this race. Ladies and gentlemen, the decision has already been made that they don't want the incumbent here for a 3rd term. Part 2, as it relates to Janelle, I think what she said relating to Lompoc is incredibly important, but the decision for you is Janelle nothing more than version 2.0 of the incumbent. The answer to that respectfully is no. I think she's going to do a phenomenal job tonight of differentiating and distinguishing herself relative to the incumbent, which then leaves me as part 3, where I think we have probably the most straightforward choice for you as it relates to change for the county of Santa Barbara. The 3rd District is the swing seat for the county, and let's be mindful of that in terms of the fiduciary responsibility we have in that regard. Our role here is that we have a specific proposal and plan for Santa Barbara County. And we're not coming to you simply saying we're going to balance the budget. We're talking about fully funding the county. The exercise of balancing a budget, anybody with a high school education can cross the line with that merit. With that tonight, I'm going to make the case to you that we can present a case for Santa Barbara to see its true potential, true future, and have a vision where as one of the wealthiest counties in the nation, if not the world, where we should never be operating from a deficit mindset. And I look forward to having that conversation with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Each candidate will now have 90 seconds to answer each of our questions. The first question, and in our rotating order, will be answered by Janelle Osborne first. And the question is, what do you see as the biggest problem facing Santa Barbara County? And what do you propose that the Board of Supervisors do about it?
Thank you for that question. You know, I think it comes down to two things, homelessness and housing, and they're interconnected. You see housing mandate and housing element updates from the state that we're all trying to implement. And unfortunately, especially here in Goleta, the housing element has placed a lot of additional housing burdens on the surrounding unincorporated areas that is going to complicate what Goleta's already done. You've done a good job of addressing the housing for homeless, so I don't see that as an issue, but it's still going to impact you. So I think it's really important that we take a step back and really identify where that housing really belongs and not just take advantage of the locations that seemed to be appropriate because they were flat or buildable, and really look at Goleta and say, you've done a good job of building out housing in South County. Should you really continue to carry more of that burden? And again, you're doing a great job in investing in the homeless population, and how does the county need to support you in what you're already doing and what is missing?
Thank you. Mr. Troyes, same question.
Thank you. When I grew up in school, we were dirt poor back in New York City, and the city of New York came back to us and said, well, you know what, we're going to substitute for vegetables a little pack of ketchups that you get from McDonald's, and that now is a vegetable. Ladies and gentlemen, here in Santa Barbara County, we have this bizarre, almost Soviet-style measure of crime where we say there's no crime in the streets because we've cut public safety by 50%. In fact, if we're truly to obtain our objective, why don't we get rid of every cop on the streets? The reality is there is no prioritization here relative to what the county has able to achieve. Why are we selecting homelessness, housing, education, and sacrificing any one of these initiatives, again, with one of the wealthiest counties in the country? Our priority in our platform is three things: revenue, revenue, revenue. And I hope tonight we can talk very specifically about the proposal that we put in front of all of you to generate over $200 million a year in recurring revenue for this county so that we are never operating from a deficit again.
Thank you. Ms. Hartman.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about the promise of this area and the role that government has for that. Our Central Coast region is poised to become a tech powerhouse. There's concerted and systematic work in partnership with private sector and educational sector and more that's taking place, led by the county in partnership with Reach and SLO County. We've championed this partnership, and we have an MOU now with SLO County and education institutions in the base and others. We've surveyed our assets, assessed our economic areas where our region is emerging with a competitive advantage, and we've determined what is needed to make this happen, this future that we have in mind for economic development. A few months ago, we issued our first comprehensive economic development strategy. It ID'd key emerging business sectors: aerospace, ag tech, clean energy, bioenergy, and bioengineering. It ID'd needed workforce skills, precision manufacturing, automated systems, chip design. And based on much research, it's available on the REACH website, whole bunch of different studies. Investment capital is already arriving, $600 million in defense at Vandenberg Space Force Base, and a lot of private investment. REACH identified $6 billion in growth capital that's slated for this region. Renewable energy is preparing to secure tens of millions in investment right here in Goleta. The critical need is to scale our workforce skills, and that's what I'm committed to doing.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by Mr. Troyes, and the question is, what is the primary issue that requires the most immediate attention within the 3rd District, and what is your plan to address this issue?
Thank you. Take two. Everybody on your phones right now, I need you to open up your browser and Google 2 words. First word is Sable, and the second word is Exxon. In the back of the room, our team has put together a flyer with a QR code. Above that word is the word recusal. A week ago, we just received news that ExxonMobil had successfully sold the platforms to a third-party provider that was well capitalized and well organized to activate the platforms on an accelerated time frame. Why did this happen? This happened because the 3rd District Supervisor, your incumbent, is unable to take action, quoting Das Williams' own words. In the information that we're going to put in the back of the room that David will put back there for your review, you will see news articles from Reuters and Bloomberg saying Santa Barbara County was unable to take action, thereby facilitating the activation and sale of those facilities. You'll notice a pathway to production in those articles, again, reaffirming the county's inability to take action. There are SEC and Edgar filings providing a timeway where the pathway to production, where Wall Street funded this initiative because the county was unable to take action. Third point, the governor and lieutenant governor have voted on this and approved and abetted this project to accelerate it. To the people of Goleta, bear in mind, page 4 of the investment presentation that David will put in the back of the room, which has a QR code for you to look at, page 4, the pathway to production. You know when the facilities go live? July of this year. April 22nd is Earth Day, ladies and gentlemen. Think about the catalyst for that. This board cannot vote on these issues.
Time.
That's the single biggest issue facing you today.
Ms. Hartman?
Yes. We're in the midst of a profound transformation in our energy sector, and the Central Coast has an opportunity to really be the leader. We all know, especially on the South Coast, that oil is dangerous to produce, to transport, and to use. We've witnessed the '69 oil spill, the 2003 abandonment of oil-contaminated housing in Orchid, and the 2015 Refugio spill. We fought proposals to run explosive oil trains through your community and fought the proposal by Exxon for 70 round-trip trips daily on the 101 and the 166. All too often, we see the cost of oil shifted onto the public. Abandoned wells off Summerlin, facilities of Veneco and Greco, bankrupt companies that the public has to pay for, and we've seen the local impacts of climate change, extreme events such as rain bombs, debris flows, massive fires, and bluff collapses. It's time to make a shift, and that is well underway, and our region is at the forefront. Santa Barbara County is part of 3CE and will have 100% renewable by 2030. We've stopped the expansion of the Elwood Peaker plant and are installing battery storage throughout Goleta. We just flipped the switch at Strauss Wind. And we have pilot floating offshore wind in the works offshore Vandenberg and more up the coast. We're developing a cutting-edge virtual power plant right here in Goleta.
Time. Ms. Osborne, same question.
So the biggest issue within the 3rd District, you can hear you have a proponent of oil and gas and you have an opponent of oil and gas. What that signals to me is our biggest issue is going to be economic development. We're potentially losing revenue from one resource and predicting what the new resource might be. In the meantime, you have individuals commuting from Lompoc here to work in Goleta. You have individuals commuting out of Goleta to work in areas in the Central Valley. What happens when we don't have a workforce to meet all of the amazing new jobs that are potentially going to be here in 5 to 10 years as identified by the REACH strategic plan? What happens when those individuals can no longer afford to live either in Goleta or Lompoc or the San Ynez Valley or find housing in order to go to those new jobs, whether they're in oil and gas or whether they're in the new energy? So for me, the biggest issue is identifying that workforce, identifying who needs the support to have that skill set, and where is the housing for that workforce, whether, again, it's traditional oil and gas, new energy, or any of the new industries suggested here tonight by the strategic plan. Because, again, if you can't put your employees in a house that's close, you're going to create other issues, and some will drive oil and gas cars and some will drive EVs until we have an infrastructure that still needs to be built to support all that. So again, it goes back to housing and workforce development.
Thank you. Next question, and this one will be answered first by Ms. Hartman. Has state legislation intended to make local governments plan, zone, and permit affordable housing gone too far? How do you restore home rule over land use, yet still meet statewide affordable housing goals?
Everywhere I go, housing costs are top of mind. Employers can't recruit and retain people, and families worry that their children can never buy a house here. And we really risk ethnic diversity because Latinos are being forced out of places like Isla Vista. It's tearing at the fabric of our community. And so critical workers such as teachers, nurses, first responders, engineers, and office workers simply can't afford to live and work here, especially South County. So we have to build more housing. It's key to maintaining a thriving community going forward here. We're building, though, not only housing, but communities and strong neighborhoods. So we have to zone for more housing to comply with the state's mandated goals. If we don't comply, the courts and the state are going to step in. What many people don't realize is that the county is an arm of the state. Beverly Hills just found out in a court case yesterday because the courts are taking over all the planning for their housing. No permits can be issued. So we must rezone and we must actually build. But it raises three questions. Where are we going to do it? How do we ensure the housing actually goes to the workforce? And what can we do to make sure that housing remains affordable over time? I've been working mightily to expand the universe of parcels that we can consider for rezoning and holding UCSB's feet to the fire.
Time. Ms. Osborne, same question, please.
A lot of us feel like, especially the cities that are having to implement the state legislation, that it's gone too far. Unfortunately, Lompoc experienced absolutely meeting mandates and exceeding mandates for low-income housing. Currently, in a population of 44,444 people, we have 30% Section 8 in low-income housing, compared to Santa Barbara, the city of Santa Barbara, and the city of Santa Maria that are double and triple our size, having single-digit percentages of that. So for me, those state mandates are required for communities that aren't building what is needed to free up affordable housing that could be utilized if there was a balanced housing market. So while it's difficult and seems like it's unfair, there are communities that outside the 3rd district that have not supported it like the 3rd district has. And so for me, the priority is to make sure that those surrounding communities build parity in that low-income housing, so affordable housing does and can be in their district instead of a bulk of it being low income.
Thank you. Mr. Troy, same question.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I was a real estate agent and I came to you today in Goleta and I said to you, I'm going to do two things as your agent. One, I'm going to put an oil derrick, which is unsafe, according to Doss Williams, on your front lawn. And in addition, I'm going to jam you with a bunch of low-income housing in your driveway. How long would you keep me as your real estate agent? Up here on stage is the individual who accelerated the implementation of those rigs offshore from 7 years to 3 months. Part two, she's in the process now of implementing a housing project that you as a community have made clear that you do not want to see implemented. A public servant is just that. I'm not here at the whim of Governor Newsom. I'm not interested in his presidential ambitions. Ladies and gentlemen, Jay Higgins, I believe it was Jay or John Higgins of the Planning Commission, said it best. The reason why Goleta is faced with this challenge today was the absence of leadership and strategic direction. The words he used exactly were, this was a self-inflicted gunshot wound by the Board of Supervisors. Do not take here today a passive approach from someone you elected to sit in a chair and represent you as a passive choice where you are a victim, which is wrong. Here, the supervisor had the choice of not moving forward with this. The board did. This is not a statement on her qualifications. This is a statement on the basis of her voting record. Now, to add insult to injury, what has the board done? They've given you an app. So now you can make a decision where in your driveway you choose to put that low-income housing. I find the entire process preposterous. And I want to be clear, as it relates to this project in Glen Annie, let me be clear, the answer is an unequivocal no.
Next question, but I would remind the candidates that you are here to give your view, not to attack the other candidates. Question 4 would be answered first by Ms. Osborne. What is your view of the long-term financial health of county government? What do you propose to reduce costs and unfunded pension liability, maintain infrastructure, and provide adequate services?
The county's done a good job of identifying where it has issues and attempting to make sure that it has a balanced budget and a healthy reserve. Unfortunately, you have things like pension, retirement that can be volatile. The county does have the advantage that it is not in CalPERS. I'm from a community that has absolutely zero control over where that investment is. So having a local group that is elected and appointed that can oversee and hear directly what is affecting that retirement investment and how it ultimately will affect the budget for this the county is an advantage. Again, it's also a disadvantage because you could have political influence or mistakes that you directly experience, but there is a benefit to it being local. The other opportunities we have is absolutely for maintenance. Rather than acquiring new spaces and new properties, we really need to focus on not only the roads that have begun to be improved, but the parks that exist. The ones that the county already owns needs an investment. There are parks here that have not had the investment, haven't had the improvements, and before we go acquiring new green space and open space, we need to take care of what already exists. So the goal for me would be to identify where and how to fund that through the state and the federal grants that exist. We've done a good job in Lompoc. I have experience doing it, and I look forward to identifying those and setting aside the funds to maintain.
Thank you. Mr. Troy, same question, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's no reason at all in this county for us to even be talking about cuts or deficits, but the key here is the person who sits in the chair of supervisor needs to be able to vote on the issues. They cannot continue to recuse themselves from these matters. On energy and climate, we've already established that the incumbent cannot vote on those issues relative to a pipeline being adjacent to a property. Now, in regards to public safety, we now know coming into this that the state will not allow her to speak on the issues regarding public safety because of a lawsuit regarding the ambulances. Why am I bringing this up? Last year, we had a $10 million shortfall as it related to cannabis. $10.5 million. Cannabis, if you looked at it, best case, generated $800,000, quote unquote, of profit, but if we exclude the $5 million of enforcement monies we've allocated for public safety to monitor it. Part two, as it relates to the ambulances. Ladies and gentlemen, we lost the lawsuit because of malfeasance by the board. When I come into this office, I'm looking at a $25 million shortfall the moment I sit in the chair, as a function of what this board did not do. Because, and I quote, they're unable to take action. Ladies and gentlemen, now with energy and climate, recusal. Now as it relates to public safety and the AMR issue and the state AG and the prosecution there, recusal. Last question for you that you should think on. Who's paying the legal fees of the Board of Supervisors? Steve, as I recall, is the only person who didn't vote for the ambulances. Who's paying their legal fees, and are we responsible for covering their costs? And the answer should be no.
The question is, what is your view of the long-term financial health of county government? What do you propose to reduce costs and unfunded pension liabilities, maintain infrastructure, and provide adequate services?
So the county budget is affected significantly by external factors: the ebbs and flows of the broader economy, state and federal budgets, emergencies. Last year we had $100 million in damage due to the rainstorms. The top priority of the Board of Supervisors is to be ready for uncertainty. And it's much improved since I took office in 2017 when we were preparing to fire 120 people. Pensions were woefully underfunded. There was significant underfunding of infrastructure, and a rainy day fund was short. I'm proud to say for the past 5 years, we've had no service level reductions. Pensions will be fully funded by 2030, and we're hitting our infrastructure investment targets. Our rainy day reserve funds are fully financed. We're cautious and budgeting conservatively. Our 5-year forecast says we're going to be a little short, but last year we predicted we would just be on target, and we had $28 million that we didn't expect from property tax revenues. So we've budgeted very prudently for the shortfall that we're expecting over the next few years. We've really invested heavily in technology, and we're getting efficiencies. Vacancies that are sitting empty for years, we're bringing back into our budget. And so we expect that we're going to weather this initial storm just fine. But I'm especially proud that we're maintaining fiscal stability. It requires constant vigilance, and both the county treasurer and the auditor have endorsed me.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by Mr. Troyes, and the question is, what are your criteria for rezoning prime and subprime agricultural lands in order to meet housing and commercial needs?
First off, I think we need to have a hard conversation with Governor Newsom regarding why we're now acting as a bunch of sycophants back to Sacramento. I'm actually going to give my time back to Janelle for this question, because I think here it's important that you hear relative to the need that Lompoc has and how Lompoc has been consistently rejected by the 3rd District Supervisor relative to its housing need, and how you, Goleta, are being faced with a decision you don't want, and this 3rd District Supervisor is forcing it upon you. Whereas here, the mayor of Lompoc is effectively, and I don't mean to put words in Janelle's mouth, has made a pleading case. And to me, that indicates of any area of this county that's begging for growth and asking for growth, it's Lompoc. So I respectfully give my time back to Janelle.
I'm sorry, but we do not allow for that.
Uh,
If you are done, you are done. And Ms. Hartman, you would be next answering the same question.
And would you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. What are your criteria for rezoning prime and subprime agricultural lands in order to meet housing and commercial needs?
I have a long history of trying to protect agricultural land. I led the campaign for the urban growth boundary in Buellton. Solving did the same. I advised Goleta on their measure. So protecting ag land, it's our biggest industry in the county. Everyone I talk to, from farm workers to executives, say they value living here because we have protected our farmland. What happened in Lompoc was prime agricultural land with 50s style dispersed development, and the LAFCO voted, and that's a state agency, not a county agency, voted 6-1 against Ms. Osborne, saying this was inappropriate development, a thumb out into prime agricultural land with Williamson Act property. So I am a defender of agricultural land, and my fellow LAFCO board members were the same. So we must focus more on infill, rezoning commercial space. We're going to have to go higher, or we'll have to go out. I much prefer that we go higher and denser and ADUs, and it's not the easiest thing to do, but we're stuck in a very difficult choice. And 2/3 of our housing assignment this cycle is for South County. We haven't built, and if you want your children to be able to live here, we're going to have to make some hard choices.
Thank you. Ms. Osborne?
So just a correction, it was actually a 5-2 vote for denial at LAFCO. There was a second to the motion to actually let the farmer who no longer wanted to farm a piece of property that abuts and has all of the services along it to annex and build out. The goal for that has been over 30 years. We built the infrastructure 30 years ago. Water, wastewater, and electric run there. The applicant simply wanted to hear from LAFCO, if we build, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a buffer with ag? Are you looking for density? What kind of building would be acceptable? As a result of the denial, they have filed builder's remedy. It is moving forward. It will be high density. We will gain more low income. It will be outside the city limits, and it will cost the city $8 million in impact fees that we won't receive to improve our parks, provide public safety, because that neighborhood, despite being in the county, will abut the city and be the city's responsibility because of where it's located. It is located directly next to an elementary school, so the farmer could no longer use pesticides to grow, and had a hard time leasing it because of all the documentation that's required to grow anything on that property. So, to the question, it's important to identify which communities want to grow, which communities don't want to grow, what farmers don't want to farm anymore, who does want to build, and respect that and not just infill.
The next question will be answered by Ms. Hartman first, and it is this. The governor's program in regards to behavioral wellness and homelessness includes the Care Court, the extension of gravely disabled to include persons with substance abuse disorders, and Proposition 1 on the upcoming March ballot. How will you approach providing housing and services for the homeless and expanded services for substance abusers while meeting existing demands for behavioral wellness services?
So Proposition 1 on the ballot is going to transform behavioral wellness and really take a lot of money away from services and put it into housing. And we're still trying to figure out at the county exactly what that means. The governor and the state legislature are very serious about mental illness and how we treat mental illness, as well they should. It turns out that 60% of the people in our jails are suffering from mental illness, and we really should have other kinds of beds and treatment The county has gone a long way on this. We have sobering centers, we have crisis stabilization units, we've created more beds, all of this to deal with these issues. But exactly how this Proposition 1 is going to affect the provision of services is unclear. And the care court, which actually takes mentally ill people and says, to the court, and you get an order that they have to take their medicine, they have to be treated. It's unclear exactly how that's going to work. There's also new legislation that is coercive around people with drug use disorders. And so again, the state is getting very serious. We have to figure out how to fund it and how to actually implement it so it's successful. And these are new programs, and we're still in the process of trying to figure that out.
Thank you. Ms. Osborne, same question.
My opponent is right on Prop 1. It looks to steal money from mental health supports and is a dangerous way given so little is already given to mental health, and the county is responsible for that particular social service. So I won't argue that point. Where our county has failed us is the Senate Bill 43. They are one of the 53 counties that decided to not implement it, while our neighbor, San Luis Obispo County, is moving forward to implement and not taking advantage of the assistance that the governor and the parameters have put in place because staff said we can't afford it and we don't have the staff. We really, as a board of supervisors, need to say, thank you for that information. What do you need? And go find it. Because delaying implementing Senate Bill 43 to assist with forcing mental health issues and be proactive as providing them a location and mandating it is part of what we battle, whether it's with the homeless, whether it's with addiction issues, whether it's with the fentanyl and opioid issue that we have. So delaying it for 2 more years when we have a neighboring county that is able to do it, we need to learn from that and move forward on it. And that would be my goal, is to find a way to take advantage of that, find the funding for it, but avoid stealing money from that already exists and is underfunded in the first place.
Thank you. Mr. Troyes, would you like me to repeat the question since it's rather a complicated one?
No, thank you. I appreciate your note.
There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a subtlety to the supervisor's response to the question as it regards to jails, and jails being part of this solution. But she began her presentation by talking about a balanced budget. The balanced budget actually means 50% of the services today are not available. The sheriff made a presentation this week to the Board of Supervisors indicating that he will probably be at a 60% cut. We cannot have low crime with the excuse being we have no police. There are no jails. The sheriff's budget's been cut in regards to providing this facility. This is a fallacy that's been presented to you tonight as it relates to those that are mentally ill. Janelle's point on SB 43 is critically important. Bob was the only one who had the courage to actually put a time frame on it. The incumbent actually told Lompoc, you're going to have to wait 2 years for the Board of Supervisors to come up with this. Ladies and gentlemen, ask yourselves tonight, where is the money to fund this? It doesn't exist. There's no plan from the Board of Supervisors to fund any of this other than going to the state and begging for a handout, and even then I can assure you the governor's not going to do anything. Ladies and gentlemen, the question for you over the next 48 months is, where is the money, where is the initiative, and we're already looking at a $20 million shortfall this quarter. The money doesn't exist. That's the hard question you need to be asking of your incumbent tonight.
Thank you. Okay, next question. And this one would be answered first by Ms. Osborne. Has the county adequately prepared for future emergencies such as fires, floods, and earthquakes? And if not, what should be done?
I would say it's one of the few things the county is getting right. I think, unfortunately, it's from experience. We were lucky to have support from the federal and the state governments when we had to deal with it. We've seen a huge response out of our county public safety divisions to assess how and what equipment and training they need to be better prepared. We've seen the neighborhoods affected by the fires look to educate and implement and put together plans to reduce that fire hazard. And then with the floodings, we've worked really hard to clean up and prevent what would be a catastrophic event for it to happen again. So, someone who grew up in Texas, who dealt with hurricanes, tornadoes, and other kinds of massive catastrophes, it is good to see that at least the county's getting that right. It was sad to have to experience it in order to set ourselves up to do better, but it is something that is getting right. The problem is the ongoing cost. We need to be able to fund that. We need to be able to do more, and we need to identify and be proactive. Plans are being put in place. There's wildfire plans, strategic plans, identifying areas that we need to clean up. That's always going to cost us money. It's an ongoing issue. It's not a one and done. So the question will be, how do we continue to fund being a very prepared and healthy community when it comes to disasters? Because we can't predict them. They will happen. We just need to be as prepared as possible.
Okay. Mr. Troy, same question, please.
My concern tonight is that all the questions are taking the tone and tenor of operating from a deficit and shortfalls and cuts and what we call in my industry a little bit of left pocket, right pocket pool. We're taking money from Peter to pay Paul. Janelle made a good point. Public safety has made crystal clear they are at 50% of their need. When are we going to have in this conversation with you tonight a discussion about revenue, about how to fully fund the county? Ladies and gentlemen, how many of you have now gotten pushback from your insurance companies relative to insuring your homes? Exactly. We can't get fire. We are basically a war zone here from insurance. So here for the city of Goleta, I put it to you. Tonight you've just learned that your properties are going to depreciate in value as it relates to that facility going live. You also now know that as it relates to public safety, and let's be clear, if we're talking about natural disasters, the first responders are going to be those ambulances. Who's showing up? Is it AMR or is it the fire department? I don't know. More importantly, who's paying for them to get there? We don't have the money to do that, and you're hearing this consistent theme. What I'd like to do, if we can tonight, is start to focus on a path forward for the county in terms of revenue and how to fund these programs and these initiatives. And I'm tired of hearing, and I'm sorry, I know this is out of district, but the idea that in the first district, we're having a conversation with that neighborhood about, do we put in netting, do we pull netting out? We're doing absolutely nothing for this community in the 3rd district and in Santa Barbara County as it relates to public safety.
Okay, let's see. Excuse me,
I think
Ms.
it's
Hartman, yes.
Yes. Fire safety is of critical importance, and I've been very active. But I think I need to make something clear about state finances and county budgets. Over half of the county's budget is pass-through money from the state and the federal government. And a lot of money right now is available for cap and trade for fire safety. And so I'm on the board of the Fire Safe Council. This organization has grown from a couple $1,000s a year budget to several $1 million a year budget. And we are focused like a laser on shared public safety because the fire department, which always shows up first at ambulance calls, they're working on this, but they can't do it alone. We all have to step up. You know what the Sundowners are like in Goleta. So we're working everywhere, creating fire-wise communities, getting neighborhoods together. The biggest thing you can do is know your neighbors. Look out for your neighbors. That's what helps. And then working with your neighbors to make your neighborhood safer. Then working to develop a plan to make your community safer. We also have a pilot wildfire mitigation project for all of Goleta, all of the South Coast, that's going to be a pioneering effort for the rest of the Western United States. This analyzes the built environment, the natural landscape, and the social environment, and then outlines projects in priority.
Time. The next question will be answered first by Mr. Troist, and it is this. What changes, if any, do you support in the county's system of regulating the cultivation, preparation, and sales of cannabis?
Ladies and gentlemen, regrettably during the day I'm a business person and I have to look at a P&L every day. This is the single worst business decision the county made. And to this day, I still don't understand why we continue to lean into this. Last go around, the county collected $5.8 million and had a $10.5 million shortfall. The county spent $5 million in enforcement to make sure that there wasn't a black market as it related to cannabis. We now have a cottage industry of cannabis sniffing equipment that we're now creating as a function of this trade. This industry has been rejected by Wall Street as an ongoing concern. This industry was a knee-jerk response by the Board of Supervisors in their inability to actually build a sustainable revenue stream for the county. This industry will continue to lose money. This industry will not have support of the banking community. This industry will not be able to attract investment capital. This industry now, and my heart goes out to the folks in cannabis because I believe they were sold a bill of goods by the county supervisors. It was implemented wrong, it was regulated wrong, and guess who's going to end up paying for it at the end of the day? The only way this industry survives is through a subsidy by you. And I'll be candid with you, I still have issues with the morality of this industry as it relates to our children. And the very idea that I need to create a community of potentially addicts on non-prescription use of this is concerning to me. So I would say to you all, the cannabis industry, regrettably, I will not be paying attention to this. As far as I'm concerned, this will just die a natural, quiet death on its own.
Time. Ms. Hartman?
I've supported, well, first of all, the federal government is deregulating cannabis. It's a bipartisan matter. I've supported the cannabis program, but I have been adamant about controlling nuisances and especially odor. And the reason I support it was a high-value crop for ranchers and farmers that, given the high price of property in our area, sometimes, especially during droughts, have a hard time making it. But I have been the leader in what was initially a Wild West as people tried to exploit the opportunities of this new industry. I kept retail to only 6 operations in the entire unincorporated county. You'll see 30-some in Lompoc. And I got the board to agree that instead of a lottery, we would have a grant program and that these retail operations would have to reinvest in education and in the community. I promoted high-value processing and testing jobs in the cities. I initiated caps on cultivation, bans on EDRNs, and now higher-level permits for all new cannabis operations coming through the permit process. And the majority recently agreed to reconsider odor regulations. So it's a high-value crop for farmers and ranchers, but we know that it isn't good for the developing brain, and therefore it should not be promoted and normalized as appropriate for young people. So I'm working carefully with our public health department to make sure the education programs are robust.
Ms. Osborne, same question, please.
So I got my start in politics by saying that if the state legalized cannabis, the city of Lompoc should allow it and regulate it. And the state did it, and my local community voted at the same level. Where we got it right initially was that we didn't put any caps on anything. So the lie that we have 30 dispensaries is a lie. We had 26 applications for dispensaries. Of those, 14 opened. Of those 14, 9 are remaining, and of 9, 5 are up for sale. So that cap that I initially recommended, and my council argued free market, so we don't have to get involved in who the applicants are, making decisions and putting a political tone on it, has normalized itself and will likely end up with anywhere from 4 to 6 dispensaries. The other benefit is we didn't try and over-regulate it with additional rules. We put the state rules in place and utilized them. We didn't put additional staffing in. We used our own planning department and we normalized the industry. They got in line with every other housing development, grocery store, or business that was going through the planning. What we did fail at was oversight. And since then, I have a council that has agreed and put oversight in place. We taxed and got our tax on immediately. It was reasonable and not overwrought. So the black market that has occurred is a statewide issue because communities were allowed to do a 100% ban or set limits. If they had matched something like a liquor license and said, cap it there and not disallow it, you wouldn't see the black market.
Time. Thank you. Next question will be answered first by Ms. Hartman. The Board of Supervisors has responsibility for the whole county, yet each supervisor also represents his or her own district. How will you balance these interests?
I started out in the academic world, and I had a mentor who said there are department people and there are university people. I have to look out for the interest of the whole county, and that's important for every board of supervisors. We're not there just fighting each other for our own district. We all, first and foremost, have to look out for the residents of the entire county. And I'm very proud of this board that I serve on because it's very collegial, and we look out for each other, and we look out for the county first and foremost, for the budget, and then for the safety. And I just like to answer one of my opponent's contentions. Safety is about more than law enforcement. Safety, law enforcement ends up having to deal with everything that goes to the end of the pipe, flows down the pipe. And then it's like an odds and ends drawer ends up in the jail. We're trying very hard as a board to deal with the issue upstream. Investing in sobering centers, crisis stabilization units, holistic defense, restorative justice, co-response. These are all ways that we are trying to deal with issues so that they don't end up in the jail where people cycle in and out at great expense to all of us. So these are the kinds of issues that we have to focus on first and foremost, countywide issues and then community issues.
Ms. Osborne, same question.
So as the mayor for the city of Lompoc, I've had experience at advocating for the entirety of a community while balancing each district. We were forced into districts, and a district was created around my prior seat on the council when I sat there. So I initially had to learn how to balance advocating for the needs of my district versus what is needed for the community. And I think the Board of Supervisors has that same issue. Unfortunately, District 3 really hasn't had a voice, and you haven't really seen a balance that includes what the needs are. So when you have that balance, when you're looking at the entire county, it is very important to make sure that the issues within your district are being addressed. If your district's issues are being ignored at the betterment of the entire county, then it isn't a balance, and you aren't doing what's best for the entirety of the county. So I look to balancing the needs in the district, and do the answers as a countywide level really meet the district as well? And then you have a balance. But if the decisions you're making at countywide are affecting your district disproportionately and driving it to bear the brunt of much of those decisions, then it isn't a balanced approach, and you aren't taking care of the entire county by also taking care of your district.
Mr. Troyes, same question, please.
Thank you. I'm glad we're here in Goleta because I think my constituents in Santa Ynez might have a different reaction to my answer. If we looked at Santa Barbara County from afar, the first reaction would be it's the American Riviera. But if we actually paused and look at Santa Barbara County today in terms of the present day, there are two priorities that are there. And forgive me, I'm going to highlight something. Lompoc right now is in a difficult position, and it's not Janelle's fault. Let me be crystal clear on that. But all of you are aware of the Circle K shooting, which, despite the highest intentions that my colleague is alluding to, a perpetrator went back twice. He robbed the store twice at gunpoint. Second time he went back, regrettably, he was brought down by law enforcement. He went and robbed the same store twice. With all due respect to the mayor of Lompoc, again, it's out of her control. There is no focus on public safety in Lompoc, and it's not her fault. We now have, this week, the sheriff presented to the board, along with the attorneys, there are 1,400 outstanding arrest warrants here in Santa Barbara County. I asked the incumbent, what was the criteria for saying, that's a pass, ladies and gentlemen? Maybe you beat your spouse. Maybe you stabbed somebody, you didn't shoot him. What was the criteria to say 1,400 individuals could walk in our community? So I would say to you today respectfully, public safety is issue number one, and please don't tell me that's a downstream problem. Something about a knife at my gut or a gun in the face of my child, that's a very much situation right now problem that needs to be addressed. Here in Goleta, you now learned tonight that you now have energy as a problem.
Time. The next question will be answered first by Ms. Osborne. What is the best way to assure an adequate water supply for residential, agricultural, and environmental uses throughout the county?
Well, I would say that it gives me great pleasure. When I moved here, the desal plant was being dismantled and sold off. And so to see the desal plant restarted and invested in is a huge step forward. We're going to have to look beyond the traditional means where we've put moratoriums on building, or we have put dire straits on ourselves to conserve water. We're still going to need to conserve water, but we need to move into the modern technology that is not only desal plants and doing more of them, but also taking our wastewater and turning it into potable water. And a lot of people don't like to hear that, but we need to move forward. We already recognize that we have limited water. We realize that with climate change and with weather, it changes. We are in drought years occasionally. We're in flooding season, luckily, this year and last year. But we can't depend on that. The only way we are going to be able to sustain is to take those conservation modes, practice them daily, each and every one of us, but invest in and diversify the kind of water we utilize and where we utilize it so that we can keep ag, build more houses, and take those showers we all love.
Mr. Troyes?
You know, it's interesting. When I first moved here to the county, I was most intrigued by this issue because of my fascination with the movie Chinatown and the power of water. First myth here in Santa Barbara County, we actually have plenty of water. Okay? It's a myth that there's a shortage. What's happening due to the ineptitude of the Board of Supervisors is that they've made the decision to intercede with each one of the water districts and impose their rule, their judgment, their power, their authority over the water districts who actually know the exact decisions that they need to make in their communities. And I would encourage everybody here tonight to actually ask your local water authorities exactly what the problem is, and with unanimity, they will tell you it's with the Board of Supervisors. Why? The Board of Supervisors has crossed the line as it relates to the supervision of what the districts need to do as a function of the debt that was issued. So in other words, they've decided to over-regulate and over-intercede in this issue. The county simply needs to get out of the way of the local water districts. That's what needs to occur.
Ms. Hartman?
Thank you. Well, when we agree, we agree. I agree with Janelle Osborne on the issue of what we need to do on water. We need to conserve first and foremost, and then we really need to capture water. That is a tremendous source, and the county, really at my initiation, has done a study about where the groundwater basins are. And the next thing we have to do is make sure that we protect those recharge areas, because that's the cheapest water. That's where agriculture gets its water, and that's really where we need to focus if we want to keep our county an agricultural county. We can do desal, that's highly energy expensive. So potable reuse, direct, and indirect. Indirect is when you treat it and it goes back into the groundwater. Direct is when it goes straight into the tap. The technologies are there, and the state has just issued regulations on direct potable reuse. So we have Carpinteria is developing a facility, and we're looking at that for the county Laguna San as well. So water is an absolutely critical issue. The issue of Cachuma, which is one small part of the whole water pie, is a conflict between a few water districts and the county about how we manage water over the long term. Do we want to use it up in the lake right away, or do we want to hold it there so we have water for the long run? And the county, water is a public trust resource as well as a commodity.
Time. Thank you. Okay. Next question. And this will be answered first by Mr. Troyes. How would you improve communication between Santa Barbara County government and its constituents?
One of the first things we're going to do in this office on March 6th, when we have the pleasure as a function of your vote in the primary, we're going to institute a different framework in the Office of Supervisor. I've actually here with me tonight is Dave King, who's the mayor of Buellton, and I've asked Dave to help structure our office so we will have experienced leadership in the 3rd District office representing Goleta, Lompoc, and Santa Ynez. We intend to have an office not in Santa Ynez, but in Lompoc. I think Janelle made a very good point, and she and I were trading some comments relative to our filings and the issue she had to go to and the distance she needed to travel to file her paperwork for this office. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a small county geographically. It's actually very, very easy for us to communicate, and we need to err on over-communicating. I think the challenge we're having at the Board of Supervisors is the opinion that somehow or another the Board of Supervisors sits above you. They talk at you. They don't talk with you. They're not in the community engaging with you. And now, given the environment that we're in today, I think we need to communicate even more so. And it's not through email or social media and a bunch of pictures of me at a bar on Instagram that I highlight to you. It's actually being in the community, playing baseball, watching my son lose another baseball game in Lompoc as a function of his club team, That's the level of engagement we need to have here in the county of Santa Barbara in the 3rd District.
Thank you. Ms. Hartman?
Yes, my office works very hard to be responsive to constituents. We have 3 different communities, and we are extremely active in each and every one of them, and each has very distinct goals. What is unusual about my office is that we work hard with communities to accomplish their own goals. In Goleta, it's fire. In Lompoc, it's economic development, homeless, and youth violence, which hasn't been well addressed. The issues of Lompoc police have to do with Lompoc, not the county. They're a full-service city, and they police their own residents. So I am out in the community. I have staff who are out in the community. I have office hours. I've held office hours again and again in Goleta with the mayor at the market. I attend events. I think that is one of the hallmarks of my supervisor tenure, is to be engaged, be available, and really be part of the communities that I serve. Mr. Troy has lived in Singapore for most of the last 7 years. He's unknown in much of Santa Ynez Valley because he doesn't get engaged in civic organizations. He doesn't really have the pulse of the community,
Claire,
and
I
he
thought we
likes
had
to
a rule
make
regarding
stuff up.
disparaging comments.
It's, I think we'll stop at that point.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Ms. Osborne?
I have no staff. I don't have anybody else but myself to go out and be present in the community, and I work really hard to be present. So my goal, to improve the communication that is already well done. I will say the Board of Supervisors each have email that they send out. They have pages that keep you informed. They have staff that are present, and they do hold lots of sessions and meetings. I think the important thing is, are they actually listening? And that's the goal. As a representative, it's important to actually listen to the community. As one of the opponents has stated, we had a public safety issue. That actually has been addressed. We have worked really, really hard, not only with the one-time funds from ARPA to get them their modernized radios, we had 30-year-old radios, to get them the body cameras that they need. Supply chain is literally what's slowing us down. We were very lucky to have already ordered a brand new fire truck to replace one of our 30-year-old fire trucks, and used ARPA funds to purchase another, and then a brush truck recently. That has really improved. We're getting the training that we need. The issue is we're understaffed and lose our employees to the county, which pays better, or to other communities which pay better. So when we have crises in our community, when we're having issues with public safety, we have done everything we can to improve them because we were listening to our community. And that requires me to be out there and be present. So again, my commitment to improving communication is being there, being as present as often as possible in every one of those communities.
Time. Our next question is our last prepared question. And the final question, which will again be answered first by Ms. Hartman, is this. What is your message to young people and others who may think that voting and participating in the democratic process is meaningless?
I believe in democracy like a religious faith. And I've studied government, and not to sound too philosophical, but John Stuart Mill asked the question, would you rather have a benevolent dictator, or would you rather have democracy? The benevolent dictator would do everything right, but democracy is messy. Which would you rather have? You want democracy because that's how we grow. We exchange information, we learn from each other, and not only individually, as communities. When I'm out in the community working with convening people who are working on youth issues, convening people who are working on homeless issues, and saying, what are your goals? And working together, we learn from each other, we grow as a civic society. And in that, we learn how to identify the issues that are important to us, and we learn how to work together to solve them. Government, the supervisors, seem to think they're all powerful. We have our power derives from working with communities and working with people. And I have done that on community goals again and again. And that is the kind of thing that is tremendously rewarding and really has an impact. Local government is where the rubber meets the road. Local government is where you actually can know people. We have people come into our office and shadow and intern and learn about government.
Time. Ms. Osborne.
This is a timely question. I had the honor yesterday of having a local organization, Future for Youth, organized by the youth, coordinated by the youth to be advocates for themselves within our community. And they came to City Hall to tour the facility, understand what kind of jobs and careers are there, and then spend a half hour with me to ask me about local government. And one of the questions was, why should we vote? And I said, well, what do you think it takes to be a elected official here in the community of Lompoc, to run for city council? And when I shared with them that all it required that you be a registered voter in the city of Lompoc, 18, and live in the city of Lompoc, and you could run, they were shocked. They didn't realize, they thought everybody needed to have a college degree. They thought you needed to be really smart, that you needed to have millions of years of experience, because I had gray hair, so I'm quite old to them. But by the end of the conversation, I had students asking questions, sharing ideas of solutions, asking how they could get involved, and the first thing I told them was vote. It's a local body that makes decisions that directly affect you. You have access to us, you get to know us, you get to meet with us, you get to talk to us. Get involved. It's the only way you'll see change. You won't see change at the state and federal level. Local government is your voice. Use that vote. If you don't, and you come to complain to me, it's hard for me to listen to you if you don't vote.
Mr. Troyes, same question, please.
You heard me earlier allude to the fact that when I grew up, we were dirt poor. And I'm a direct byproduct of New York public schools, good or bad, so I apologize if I'm direct. But my dad gave me one mantra when I was growing up as a kid. He said, you know what you do? You learn it, earn it, and return it. With that, the greatest people that are the filter for me in terms of whether or not I've actually resonated are my two children, my daughter and my son. And early on, they didn't understand what I was doing, but maybe if I could share with you a little bit tonight. Back during the great financial crisis of 2011, I couldn't have been prouder to have worked with Governor Schwarzenegger and Treasurer Lockyer, literally, to help the state of California avoid a debt crisis in their muni bond market. Following that, with my work with the state of California, the county, this county of supervisors, knew that SB SERS, the pension system here, was in default. And behind that, they knew that PBG, the insurance behind it, was also not able to sustain it. And the county was going to be looking at hundreds of millions of dollars of defaults and a drastic cut in services. And we figured out a plan to get the county ahead on that. And ladies and gentlemen, today in my public service and civic duty to the country, I serve and lead a $47 billion effort. I am technically a Biden appointee for the Export-Import Bank of the United States, creating American jobs and creating American exports in quantum computing, artificial intelligence, subsea cable, and you know the only one that my son cares about are those rockets off Vandenberg that he sees launch with SpaceX each weekend. So I'm proof positive of the fact of a public-private role, and I'm absolutely thrilled at the opportunity to continue doing that.
Time. All right. First of all, I'd like to address an issue that has come up that several people in the audience have mentioned to me, and that was some concern about Mr. Troyes mentioning some things about Ms. Hartman's record. The agreement is not to have personal attacks. Comments regarding someone's record is unfortunately for some fair game, but it is not appropriate to attack someone for their personal what do I want to say? For anything that does not deal specifically with the job, I suppose would be how I would put it. So I realize sometimes that's a hard line to determine, but it is the way things are. All right. The first question will be answered first by Ms. Osborne, and it is this. What can the county do to set an example of fuel economy to help people choose energy-saving alternatives and plan for the effects of climate change?
Thank you for that question. As the mayor of a full-service city that owns their own power and own power generation and has for over 54 years, the county is beginning to do just that and invest in the production. The city of Lompoc owns a geothermal facility, and so we generate power from that. We have a hydroelectric facility that we built. It was built as the most modern and efficient hydroelectric dam system to generate power. And we're part owners in the Lodi Energy Center. The Lodi Energy Center was also built to be a modernized, fuel-efficient, natural gas fast start turbine to supplement when solar and wind are not able to deliver power. So we support the entire network across the state with the Lodi Energy Center. What we're doing with it is we're investing in converting it into a hydrogen hub, and so it will transition from being a natural gas to a hydrogen-fueled. The turbine already exists, can accommodate it, and we are beginning that process, and we have been approved as part of the state's application to the Biden hub infrastructure. So a facility that's already built, it's already being paid for by our community, is allowing us to already be 76% green. So the county is beginning to invest in and own their own energy production, and that's how you transition and encourage others to utilize and have green energy as part of their life.
Mr. Troy, same question.
Thank you. One of the things I don't talk enough about is that our firm in Southeast Asia is the leading merchant bank for climate and sustainability. So I can talk forever about this. I can talk about turbines. I can talk about solar. I can talk about EV. I can talk about batteries. I can talk about critical minerals. There's a key formula as it relates to energy that one of my colleagues here on the forum will not be able to address. Very simply, if I take a gallon of gas out of your car, I have to put something else in it so that you can get to work. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a 50,000-foot, highfalutin conversation about an aspirational dream of what climate can do. It's purely a function of how do we allow you to continue to live your lives and afford a seamless transition. Data point for you, take this home with the kids. Do you know it takes 5 tablespoons of diesel to make a tomato? Are we even aware of that in terms of the supply chain of how dependent we are on fossil fuels? One of the hardest things we learned in our job in Southeast Asia is that climate is a hard transition. Climate, you have to negotiate with people you don't like. In climate, you have to make very, very difficult decisions. But at the same time, to quote and paraphrase Margaret Atwood, the author, the longer we go without solving climate, the less solutions we have available to address it. Ladies and gentlemen, prior to tonight, I actually expected you to ask me, Frank, in your 5-point proposal for revenue for the county, you addressed a climate framework. Ladies and gentlemen, we had pre-negotiated with Exxon an electricity rebate to the county of upwards of 50%, where Exxon was going to provide stability to the grid and a 50% discount to your electricity in perpetuity. That's the first step to a climate framework and discussion.
Time. Ms. Hartman?
Very interesting to be negotiating on behalf of the county already. So the first thing the county does is clean up its own house. So we have our buildings are retrofitted. We've got solar in our parking lots. We've got EV chargers, and we pioneered the 3CE, Central Coast Community Energy, that has invested $2 billion in generating renewable energy, and has also kept prices lower than the utilities, and has invested in low-income communities in particular for EV charging stations. We will reach our all-electric goal by 2030, 15 years ahead of the state. But what's really exciting to me is looking forward. I'm working with some private sector people as well as Leah Stokes at UCSB to create a virtual power plant here in Goleta. We're at tremendous risk because we depend on a transmission line that runs over rugged terrain that almost went down in the Thomas Fire and had to be defended by firefighters, and they risked their lives so that we aren't out of power for 2 weeks, a month, longer. So the virtual power plant takes solar on rooftops and parking lots all around from Carpinteria to Goleta, and then connects them with a virtual power plant and artificial intelligence and manages it as a unit responding to supply and demand.
Time. The next question, answered first by Mr. Troyes, and the question is, do you have any concerns about the integrity of the coming election?
Which election?
The coming election, the March 5th election.
The local election or the national election?
It's a general statement. It's up to you.
Could you repeat it? I didn't hear
The question writer did not specify. Do you have any concerns about the integrity of the coming election? I'm assuming it's the March 5th.
Okay, so we're not talking about the national primary? Okay.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm just asking you as the moderator for clarification. So why don't we just keep it local and leave the insanity of
Okay.
national politics to the side?
Sounds good to me.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, going into March 5th, you have a clear decision in front of you because one of us here on stage has proven point of fact they are unable to take action. They've proven they can't vote on the pipeline, and you've seen the consequence of that, and we've documented it for you tonight. Going into March 5th, you then have to make a decision in regards to public safety and the ambulance issue coming down from the State Attorney General, whether or not the incumbent can vote on public safety. She will tell you she can't. Then as it relates to SB 1439, which is the other issue regarding campaign donations, you're hearing a pervasive theme tonight regarding a conflict of interest as it relates to donors. I would encourage all of you following tonight, because there's going to be a set of disclosures made at the end of this month, follow the money. See which one of us is patronizing whom in this election. You're noticing a hard theme tonight as it relates to the fire department. You understand exactly what I'm saying. Going into the March 5th election, our campaign will fully disclose, and you will see the contributions we did not accept. The only PAC we've accepted money from, and with great pride, is from the deputies. So I'd say to you going into March 5th, if you're happy with the way things are, and having an incumbent sitting on the Board of Supervisors who cannot vote for the critical issues facing Goleta, I would say to you, rethink that. And can you really wait until November, over several more months, given what we've disclosed tonight, for this to continue?
Time. Ms. Hartman?
Although the election is in March, one wouldn't assume office until January. So not only does my opponent not understand a lot about the separation of powers and how government works, but even when one would take office. I have tremendous confidence in the integrity of our elections here in Santa Barbara County, and that comes from experience. In Isla Vista, people vote and move, and it's very complex. And so some of the votes were challenged. They were challenged in court by someone who lost the election. It went to the district court. It went to the appeals court. It was actually, there was a petition to go to the Supreme Court. So at every level, Joe Holland and our elections were vetted and analyzed, and people went out and talked to voters afterwards. And in one election, there were only 6 votes separating the candidates. But when they go back and they look in great detail, they see that, in fact, our elections are reliable. And it's really an attack on democracy to go after elections the way that people are. We've had people coming to the Board of Supervisors and claiming elections aren't reliable, except when they win. If we can't agree on how to hold elections, we're in big trouble.
Ms. Osborne, same question, please.
I've had the pleasure of running 4 different campaigns and having my elections vetted by the county. The city doesn't run its own, and all of them have been done transparently and correctly. So I can say with great confidence that the local system works and is thorough and correct. So I don't have a concern with the integrity. Personally, I've signed the agreement to not attack or deface either of my opponents, just set records straight if incorrect information is there. I've also signed the commitment that says I will spend no more than $96,000 during the campaign, partially because I don't have endorsements and I don't have a lot of money and I'm not self-funded. And so most of my campaign have been run from a grassroots aspect, local donors, occasionally some unions. I admit, I have had the pleasure of union support from the city employees, the fire, and the police department at different times. So it can make a difference, it can be helpful, but I don't see that money is what's important in the campaign. It's you taking the time to vote and match a candidate with who you believe is going to listen to you and vote to support your needs and your desires.
Thank you. Next question, which will be answered first by Ms. Hartman. In December, our county administrator stated that the county would be broke in 48 months. How do you plan to solve this issue, and what is your plan to increase revenue?
The county did not say we'll be broke. The issue is we do 5-year projections, and any government is not entirely in control of the larger economy. We're not in control of the state and federal budget, where I already said we get over half of our income. So we project 5 years out, and we do that so that we can start in this year to manage and sock money away if we need to. As I said, this current fiscal year, we had a windfall of $27 million because property taxes were higher than what we had anticipated. So we try to project, but we don't always predict. But we know that we face disasters. I said we had $100 million in disaster just to county facilities last year. So we sock away money in various kinds of reserves. We anticipate what's happening, and we plan for that, and we have done that, and that's why we haven't had any reductions in our service levels since the first year I took office. We're very conservative in how we use people's money, and I'm very proud of what our board has done, because we've invested technology, IT, so that we can do things much more efficiently. And we've invested in process improvements so we can do things much more efficiently and transparently. And so you should be proud of the county government.
Ms. Osborne, same question, please.
So the age-old adage of trust but verify, thankfully the CEO for the county invites all of the candidates to meet with her and her staff to understand the structure of the county, the budget, and ask any questions of them. So I took advantage of that, and I went and sat in a room and discussed where is the budget going, what does it look like, and to Supervisor Hartman's credit, that is exactly the same answer I got. You can look at the budget documents. That is the difference between business and government. We're required to be transparent. The city of Lompoc, when I got elected, had a deficit issue. We got down to having a negative $216,000 in our reserves during the pandemic. I'm very proud to say that during my term in leadership, we identified the problem. We put sales tax measures in place. We put cannabis tax in place. We put a reserve back in, and we are now back to our $8 million reserve. And we are investing in our community and improving in the community and wisely using those funds. So yes, you have to look at it. You have to predict. And as the CEO of the county stated, 50% of the funds come from the state and are mandated social services. It's the other part we're worried about. It's the other part we need to be proactive about. When you look at the sheriff's department and their needs, when you look at ongoing fire needs, when you look at the lawsuits that have been created by some of the decisions and that loss of revenue going to fight lawsuits instead of to the utilities or to the other issues, we have to address those.
Mr. Troy, same question, please.
Thank you. I want to correct one fact here because we keep referencing the sheriff and everybody should reach out to him. There has been a reduction in service levels. So the statement that there was no reduction in service levels is a fallacy. You do not need to look any further when you see a deputy in the car by himself because he does not have a partner with him. They should always have a partner with them in the car. They are at least at 50% understaffing, and I can go on about this. So the fallacy of saying we haven't cut service is simply not true. Ladies and gentlemen, the other half of the revenue stream for the county is, believe it or not, Santa Barbara County, when you look at it, has property taxes, sales taxes, and transient fees, which by default means we're a real estate company. What's the single biggest thing we have here we all talk about that we all need? We need housing. So we've already identified that the county is structurally set up to accept money and revenue as it results from housing, given the three revenue streams that I just identified for you, yet we show a complete inability to execute on housing. Our proposal that we put forward, and this is the closest one, Claire, that's come to actually asking me directly about a specific revenue plan for the county. We are crystal clear about how to reactivate planning and development and eliminate that backlog of property in queue that's already been pre-approved by the county to develop. And part two, the other thing here too is, look at our revenue proposal. You will see our support for the incumbent's position on child care, which would generate $30 million a year to the county. Yet the incumbent has viscerally opposed that initiative, which is our own initiative to implement here in the county.
We will have one last question and then the closing statements by the candidates. And this question will be answered first by Mr. Troyes. I think I'm in the right order here. The question is, how would you bring more business to the 3rd District?
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the reasons why I keep talking about March 6th is the fact of the matter is that Santa Barbara County needs to send a message to the market that it can act. We can no longer use the expression of Doss Williams that the Board of Supervisors is unable to act. We have 9 months to signal to the community of business leaders here that there's been a change of leadership and that there's a plan of attack moving forward. We don't start working in January when it's time for the be sworn in. We have to act now as it relates to the county. We presented 5 initiatives here in terms of a revenue stream, all of which have been supported by the technology community here in town. All of them. A technology campus up in Lompoc, childcare, space camp in Lompoc. Let's remove the floodgates in planning and development. All of which has been right here in front of Santa Barbara County from the onset. Nothing we have proposed, it's been out there now for 9 months. And with all due respect to the county CEO, nobody in the private sector, public sector, or at UCSB, or at REACH, or any of the agencies here in Santa Barbara County has voiced one single opposition statement technically to what we've proposed to the county. That document is fully available. It's in the back of the room. And I would encourage you to look at that in terms of our blueprint for $200 million a year in recurring revenue here for Santa Barbara County.
Ms. Hartman, same question.
And would you repeat the question, please? How we would create more business opportunity? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. How would you bring more businesses to the 3rd district?
The 3rd district is booming, especially here in Goleta. But the benefits of economic development are not equally spread around our county, and especially in Lompoc. And you don't create a plan by just pulling stuff out of the air, slapping it on a piece of paper and making up some numbers and trying to have a gimmick about whether people accept your plan or not. You really build a foundation, and the foundation starts with talent. We have many, many jobs, especially in North County, that are going wanting because we don't have the talented work pool to take those jobs. Heavy equipment operator, $100,000 a year. Somebody who can fix a car, auto mechanic, $100,000 a year job. We have jobs out at Vandenberg, they can't fill them. SpaceX, they can't fill them. So we're working with the universities, we're working with Hancock. I've convened people working with REACH to create a pilot program for workforce development with Futures for Lompoc Youth, with North County Econ Alliance, and we're getting money to pay employers to hire people, students, and get them in STEM sciences because they need to know math to get these jobs. They're STEAM jobs. You've got to do computer programming. You've got to know artificial intelligence. But they're not jobs that require a BA or a higher degree.
Ms. Osborne.
I mentioned at the beginning of this that I got my start in economic development. I worked as a volunteer for 4 years with the city of Lompoc. We did a SWOT analysis. We put together a strategic plan, and we started making inroads and seeing improvements happened. So many improvements were happening from the volunteer business-led organization of the Economic Development Committee that a council at the time didn't like the change that was coming at them, and they made sure to dismantle a committee and this department that was making the work happen. So I will tell you that having a strategic plan is important. Having the staff that are working on that plan is important. It's great that we have REACH. It is great that we have Econ Alliance. It's great that we have organizations like the Chambers working on these, but they need partners at the county to move these objects and these solutions forward because often it's policies and ordinances that are in the way. Hartman is absolutely correct when we have a local shortage of employees that have the skill set, so we need better education. What she's not telling you is SpaceX is hiring. The people are coming. They are relocating. They are not living here because there is no housing. The military base is expanding. We lost Star Command in our own backyard because we did not have enough housing for those military members to come to. Military members are turning down coming to Vandenberg.
Time. We're now to the candidates' closing statements, and we will start with, let's see, the last question was started with Mr. Troyes, So, opening statements were started with Ms. Hartman, so closing statements, I think we will begin with Mr. Troyce and do it in reverse order.
Perfect.
2 minutes.
Well, first off, thank you everybody tonight for the conversation, and it's been a pleasure to meet you. And again, thank you for making the time this evening. You have an historic opportunity on March 5th because 50% plus one, and this election is decided. The question you need to ask yourself as you drive home tonight, you now have the opportunity to address energy, climate, housing, public safety, education, and homelessness. My team and I could not be more excited to get to work early on March 6th and immediately get to work during that 9-month period leading into January to come back to you with a plan. And by the way, I just want to be clear. My job as county supervisor is not to tell you what I'm going to do. My job as county supervisor is to present you with options as to what is available to do. The 5-point plan that we presented to you with revenue is a subset of 14 initiatives. Of the 5 that we've presented to you, you could choose any one, and that would satiate the revenue gap that the county has. As you drive home tonight, ask yourself, we keep using the language of a balanced budget, but there have been service cuts here in the county. You see what's happening in crime. You see what's happening in regards to homelessness. Ask yourself, how much more money do we need to fully fund the county? And that's what is important for you to take as you go home tonight. My team and I are looking forward to working with you. We're looking forward to voting as supervisor. We're looking forward to taking action on these issues. And I look forward and I hope on March 5th I have your vote. And I would be very humbled to work with you as your supervisor for the 3rd District. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Osborne, your closing statement, please.
You now are part of a new 3rd District. The boundaries have changed. The makeup of that district has changed. The voices have changed. This is an opportunity to have an independent, thoughtful voice by electing me as your next supervisor. My goal is to provide the opportunity for the 3rd District to be heard, to be seen, and to see change. I appreciate everything Supervisor Hartman has attempted to do in the 2 years that she has represented my community. I've opened the doors to her and educated her on my community. So much more is needed because Lompoc is a burden on the county. It's a burden on 3rd District. It doesn't want to be that. So the change that I brought forward, the work I've done in Lompoc, I want to transition that to the county level and really make sure that 3rd District is set up for success, that each and every one of us can continue to live here, work here, reduce the commute, have no commute if you don't want to. If you want to grow cannabis, grow cannabis. If you want to grow wine, grow wine. If you want to work in tech, let me have a house so you can work at the base. If you want to work at the university, you should not have to drive an hour to do that. My neighbors work at the university and have commuted for 30 years because they've never been able to afford a house in Goleta to work at the university. We need a balance. It needs to start with 3rd District. As Mr. Troyce said, the 3rd District is a swing vote. It needs to swing a little bit more than it has in the recent years, and I'd like that opportunity to be that voice for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hartman, closing statement.
It's typical for challengers to allege that the sky is falling, and the only way to fix it is to elect them. The difficulty in making that argument today, though, is that our county is prospering and the envy of so many others. Ag, our largest business sector, is booming with a 27% increase in value since 2018. Our wine industry was rated the best 2021 wine region in the world, and our visitor serving industry is thriving. High-tech companies such as Google, Amazon, Yardi, and Fleer are expanding. Goleta's commercial vacancy rate is less than 4%. Our region is poised to capitalize on being an R&D powerhouse. Research creativity in Santa Barbara County, as measured by articles and patents, is 4 times that of the state. Santa Barbara County is a leader in fields creating jobs from clean tech and climate to semiconductors and space. The region has attracted over $6 billion in growth capital. Yes, we have challenges, and our track record of responding successfully to fire, oil spills, COVID floods shows we have a resilient capacity to keep Santa Barbara County flourishing. bringing high-speed affordable internet, building substantial reserves. We have adopted an exciting 2-county regional comprehensive economic development strategy. The big job we have ahead is to ensure that the benefits of this emerging economy are more widely shared across our county and across different demographic groups. That is the work ahead. I'm focused on building a pathway to quality jobs, a central goal going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I would like to thank the Goleta Union School District for the use of this facility, to TV Santa Barbara for the video and recording of this forum. Thank you to Sylvia Uribe of TransferPro for the simultaneous interpretation services. Thank you to our co-sponsor, Santa Barbara Goleta Valley AAUW, and all of the volunteers who have helped at this forum. Also, thank you to the candidates for participating this evening. We appreciate your commitment to serve your community. Thank you to everyone here and at home who has attended or listened to this forum. We hope that you found the program informative and useful as you prepare to vote. I would like to remind you that the League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara and the Santa Barbara Goleta Valley branch of AUW are also co-sponsoring a candidate forum for the first supervisorial district at 6 p.m. on Monday, February 5th at the Santa Barbara Women's Club located at 670 Mission Canyon Road next to Rocky Nook Park. That forum will also be live streamed on the League website and recorded for later viewing on the League's YouTube channel in both English and Spanish. Also, the North County League of Women Voters and the Lompoc branch of AUW are holding a forum for 3rd and 4th district candidates on February 1st at the Lompoc Civic Center. The League of Women Voters sponsors a website called Vote 411. I think you all have been given these bookmarks, which allows all candidates to submit information about their campaigns and their views on issues. Go to vote411.org and enter your address to access information about the candidates and for the offices that are appropriate for your area and for all issues that will be on the ballot. Finally, please make sure you are correctly registered to vote and vote. Your vote does matter. Mail-in ballots will be mailed out by the county beginning on Monday, February 5th. You can mail them in or drop them off at designated places, the information about which will be in the packet that comes with your mail-in ballot. That's it. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you, Claire.